So seeing stuff like this kind of freaks me out. So this is a Reddit thread, and it's about what's your listening ratio between podcasts versus music. And the guy that asked the question says, I listen to probably 95% podcast and 5% music. And a lot of the answers in this thread are pretty similar. So this first guy says 100% podcasts. I miss the feeling that music used to give me, but I just don't feel like listening anymore. That's the most upvoted response. I mean, that's pretty sad. And then this answer says, I can rock it between 95 to 5% on either, depends on activity and mood. And this other answer says, I used to listen to so much music, then I found podcasts in 2017. Now it's like 80% podcasts, 20% music now. As a musician or anyone who makes music, I thought I should really look into this. Is podcasting actually affecting the music industry? Is it having a negative effect? So let's actually look into all the data behind this so we can make a real conclusion based off real numbers to see what's happening in podcasting versus music. So I don't think the numbers behind the explosive growth of podcasting will be that big of a surprise to anyone. But in 2006, only 11% of people had ever listened to a podcast. And now that number is up to 67%. What I think is more interesting than that is of the people that listen to podcasts weekly, how much time are they spending listening to podcasts? And the average they're listening is almost 8 hours now listening to podcasts a week. I mean, that's a big chunk of your time. And then this chart shows people aged 12 to 34, what percent of them have listened to a podcast in the last week. So in 2018, it was at 22%. It's almost double that now at 43%. I actually thought this would be even higher, but you can see it's steadily growing every year. So obviously people are listening to a lot more podcasts, but I want to switch gears here and show you why podcasting is a lot better for Spotify's business model than music. So in Spotify's model for musicians, let's say you're an artist. So how they calculate how much money to pay you, your artist payout, is they take the amount of streams that you get in 1 month, your artist streams, they divide that by the total streams of the entire platform that month, and then they multiply that by the royalty pool. Now, what is the royalty pool? So to calculate the royalty pool, Spotify's latest numbers show 268 million premium paying subscribers. And then those subscribers pay on average about $5 per month. Like in the US, you pay $12 per month now, but then in places like Nigeria, it's like 50 cents per month. So it averages out to about $5 per month. So that's $1.34 billion in revenue. But then they've made these contracts with the record labels, and they have to pay out 70% of that to the music rights holders, the record labels, the publishing companies, the artists. They have to pay 70% of that to all those people. So that gives you a total royalty pool of $938 million per month at the moment. And this is just a rough estimation. I'm only including premium subscribers. I'm not including the ad-supported free tier of Spotify, but that's the total royalty pool that we get. So let's say you're an artist who's getting 1 million streams per month. So right now at the current royalty rates, you could expect to make around $3,000 off of those 1 million streams. So now we can calculate this with the total royalty pool, and we can figure out the total streams in the platform. So once we solve this equation, we get around 312 total monthly streams on the platform. Now, the numbers here don't matter that much, but I just want to show you why the whole model is kind of broken. Because let's say that the royalty pool stays the same, but let's just say that all the users on Spotify wanted to listen to more music on any given month. What would that do? So if the royalty pool stays the same, but the amount of music listened to goes up, then what that means for the artist is your royalties actually go down. So this is kind of backwards, because this means the more music that people listen to, the less money that you make as an artist. So it's kind of this weird thing where you want more people to listen to your music, but less people to listen to music overall, so you can make more money. So it's this weird model where more music listenership actually can equal less money for the artists per stream. So it's not a great deal for artists, but it's also not a great deal for Spotify either. I mean, they have to pay 70% of everything they're making in this model to the rights holders. And that leaves them 30% to pay their employees and pay all of their expenses. And then they keep the profit that's left over from that. But in this model, it's kind of capped how much money they can make off music. Like their margin and how much money they can make off music is capped. Now let's compare that to the podcasting model. So with the podcasting model, just this year in 2025, they've announced the Spotify Partner Program where you earn a 50% share of the revenue recognized every time an ad is monetized by Spotify. So when you're listening to a podcast, every time a Spotify ad pops up, then Spotify gets half that revenue, the podcaster gets half that revenue. And this is a brand new program, but a lot of people are already making $10,000 a month, and some podcasts are even making $100,000 each month already. But the reason this is so different compared to the music model is that with podcasts, the more podcasts that people listen to, the more money that Spotify makes. So they really want you to stay on their platform longer now and listen to more and more podcasts. Whereas with music, it doesn't necessarily mean if more people listen to music that Spotify or the artists make more money. But with podcasts, the more people that listen to podcasts, then the podcasters and Spotify both make more money. And that's part of the reason why Spotify is projecting 40 to 50% margins in their podcasting business, whereas music is kind of capped. Like the highest margin they can make on their music business is kind of around 30%. But I really think the biggest difference here is the incentive structure. With podcasts, they're more partners with the podcasters, and with music, musicians are kind of like an expense item for Spotify that they have to pay out. We're not really partners with them. So let's look at some more data behind this. So in this chart, we can see the portion of listening time spent with spoken word. So that would be podcasts. And that's increased a lot over the past 5 years or so. So now 23% of listening time is being spent on spoken word. But that doesn't necessarily mean that music is losing out, because it could just be overall listening time is going up. But let's check out some more data. Now this chart shows the total pie, what percentage of that total listening pie that podcast is taking up. So in 2017, it was only 2%. And in 2024, last year, it got up to almost 11%, which still sounds low. So it got me thinking, what are people listening to? What is all this time spent listening to audio on if only 11% of it is podcasts? And surprisingly, radio is still a huge share of the audio that people are listening to. So radio comes in first at 37%. Music streaming in total is 20%. Then you've got music videos on YouTube, 13%. I would kind of include that in music streaming. And then podcasts down here, like we talked about, at 11%. But I do think all these numbers are going to shift quite a lot in the next 10 years or so. So this report shows that the total market size for podcasts in 2025 is projected to be $32.5 billion, but they're projecting by 2032 that it's going to be $173 billion. So they're projecting podcasts, the whole market, to grow a lot more than the music industry. But just because podcasts are growing like crazy doesn't mean the music industry isn't also growing. So if we look at the numbers from the music industry, it hit almost $30 billion in 2024, the global recorded music revenue, and that's up 5% from last year. And the number of people paying for music subscriptions is at over 750 million, which is a ton. And if we look a little closer, there were almost 5 trillion audio streams in the world last year, up 14% globally from the year before that. So the numbers don't lie. I mean, the music industry isn't fading. It's not going anywhere. It keeps growing year over year. But what I think these numbers don't take into account is how there's more and more music uploaded every day to streaming platforms, like over 100,000 songs a day, and there's more artists than ever, and that keeps growing every year. So that's also contributing to the increase in this global music revenue. But the difference is that podcasts are just growing a lot faster than the music industry is growing. So at the end of the day, this chart doesn't look that threatening. Like in total audio time that people spend listening to audio, podcasts started around 2% over 10 years ago, and now they're at like around 11%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it keeps growing every year, and it is slowly eating into the time that people spend listening to music. But I really don't think there's a reason to freak out about any of these numbers. Like, the music industry keeps growing every year, and there's just a time and a place to listen to music versus a time and a place to listen to podcasts. Like, if you're at a party, you're not going to play a podcast in the background. So it really depends on the scenario, but podcasts are slowly taking away a little listening time from music. I'll try to keep you updated on all these trends that are happening in the music industry in between all my music production and mixing videos. So thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you next time. Peace.